Palawan, and we have another TBK Cooks. It's early in the morning, so I do apologise for the sounds of the cockerels in the background. They're outside the house, not inside. So we've been working on our new recipe online book for 2023. It's coming out on the 15th of January on our blog and our Facebook channels, and also it'll be supported from time to time by videos like this. So make sure you look out for our new recipe book. This recipe, bread and butter pudding, I found back in Bahrain. I've updated it and prepared it, and it's included in the new recipe book. So this week we've been making some British dishes, and I have to say, although I haven't eaten British food for a long time, I haven't been back to the UK for 12 years now, I actually really have enjoyed making this British food. Perhaps because it's comfort food, perhaps because it's stuff that my mum used to make for me, so I'm going to share it with you. I've also been sharing it with lots of people here in Palawan, and I have to say they have loved it. I have an American neighbour, Benny, with a Filipino wife. I have three guys actually that clean my house, do my ironing, Noel, Frithi and Jovan, and I've shared it with them and they've really loved it. And of course my Anaks, Joanna, Eli. So here we go. Without further ado, this is a dessert. It's called bread and butter pudding. As I say, I used to have it as a kid growing up in the UK in the cold winter months. And what you need is 200 grams of butter, 8 slices of bread. I'm actually using wheat raisin bread. You'll see why in a minute, because it does use raisins in the recipe. You need to have 150 grams of sultanas and raisins, it says in the recipe, and I cut this recipe out of a newspaper in Bahrain, strangely enough. And Joanna sent me a message to say, what's the difference between raisins and sultanas? So I did my usual, look it up on Google. And raisins and sultanas are the same fruit, it's just different levels of dried. Raisins are more dried out, sultanas are younger, more juicy. And they're quite difficult to get here in the Philippines. Benny gave me a packet a few weeks ago. I did find a packet in a sari store, but then they had ants in, so they wouldn't sell them to me. And this week Joanna has managed to get me another packet, so that's why we're making it again. And then we need half a jar, wow, of jam, fruit jam. And you'll see here that I'm using the Turkish jam, and in one of my blogs I explain how I know it's Turkish jam and what flavour it is, because my friend Keith, who lives in Turkey, gave me a quick lesson in Turkish. Behind that you'll see we have some milk. One of them is nearly empty. We need 250 ml of milk. We need 3 eggs, which are just tucked behind the bread over there, and some sugar to sprinkle on the top. It's quite an easy dish to make. Doesn't take long. You just put it together and then put it in the oven. So talking of the oven, I've already set the oven to 180 degrees, and that's getting up to the right heat. So by the time I prepare the dish, everything should be ready. Okay, let's start to make it. One of the problems we've been having with our cooking recently is that the stuff has stuck to the bottom of the pans. I've been doing quite a lot of baking recently, and it's very difficult to get out. Joanna found me some special chemical which you put on, and it's very strong and it takes the dried in fruit out, but in fact on my baking tray it's taking some of the coating off as well. It's so strong. So here's one of the little secrets that I can share with you. You take the wrapper from the packet of butter and you just wipe it around the bowl that we're going to use to put the bread and butter pudding in, and that way it gets like a coating of butter, and that just helps it to stop sticking to the container. So there you go. You get free wrapper and butter coating with every packet of butter. I always wonder what it was like to work in a kind of sandwich factory making sandwiches, and bread and butter pudding gives you the chance to do that. The other good thing about bread and butter pudding is it's a good way to use up stale bread that's gone a little bit off. So what we're doing here is we're buttering the bread. First on one side we have 8 slices of bread, and as I say, this is the raisin loaf, so it's got little raisins in it. Before I realised it was raisin loaf, I thought it was some kind of fly or something that got squashed in my bread. You put a reasonable amount on, not too much. You don't want escaping everywhere. So this has already got some raisins in it, which will be great. And I'm using up the crust as well. Really doesn't matter, as long as it's bread. Okay, so we've got 8 pieces done on one side. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put these into 2 lots of 4. And now we're going to butter the other side. So we're going to have 8 pieces of bread buttered on 2 sides. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put it into our dish. And we're going to put 4 pieces in the dish. And the smart ones amongst you, Matalino, would have noticed there was one side that I didn't butter. So I'm doing that now as I put it into the dish. So I'm just going to spread them out. Check they're all buttered. Okay, done. So now I'm going to take my raisins, or they could be sultanas, 180 grams. This is actually a 200 gram pack, so we're just going to have a few too many, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to sprinkle them on top of the bread and butter. So it's bread, fruit. It's a very, very nice taste. And because it's cooked in the oven, this is what we would call a winter warmer. It's still about 30 degrees here in the Philippines in November, so I don't think we need to be warming up. But in the UK, it gets very cold in the winter. It goes down to 0 degree, -1, -2. In December, they usually have snow in December, White Christmas, or in January. Okay, now we need to add the jam, and I'm going to use this blackberry jam because I have a lot of this. My next door neighbour Benny went and bought me a jar of this, and I already had half a jar, so we're going to use this up. Thank you, Benny. It's in your bread and butter pudding, and you'll be receiving some shortly. And it tells us to put half of the jar over the bread and butter and the raisins. So I'm going to finish off this jar of jam, and I'm just going to pour it. I made this a few weeks ago. It was a little bit dry. I think I overcooked it, and I didn't have anything to have with it. In the UK we would have custard with it, but I didn't make anything. So this time I'm going to find a recipe of custard and make some custard, because it's bread and it's butter and it's raisins and it's been cooked, so it ends up like a pile of toast really, and we just need something liquid to go over it. I could have used cream, I guess. The more I cook these things here in the Philippines, and I think, what can I find? Because you can't find custard here, pre-made custard. I'm going to have to find a recipe and make it myself. I keep hearing this voice in my head. It's the voice of my coach on my video vlog making, a guy called Lewis, and he keeps saying to me, change the camera angles, Neil. Don't leave it all running in the same place all the time. It gets boring. So I've changed the camera angle, and I've now taken the second 4 pieces of butter bread, which I have now cut neatly into triangles. And I'm now going to lay them along the top of my jam, my sultanas, and my first 2 pieces of bread. And these will toast kind of separately when it cooks in the oven, and they'll give it a nice little triangular pattern on the top. The full pieces of bread at the bottom won't be seen because they're underneath it all. Just need to move it around to get it all in. Let me just turn it up on its side a little bit. So there you go. There's our bread and butter pudding, nearly ready for cooking. If anyone's not sure what to get me for Christmas, then a small bowl, glass bowl, would be very nice. This one is so big. So I'm adding the milk now. We need 250 ml of milk. So that's 250, or might just get it all out of this one carton. Okay, perfect. We have lots of milk left, but we're going to use it for something else later on. We're going to pour this into our mixing bowl. And then we're going to add 3 eggs. So I need 2 hands to crack those. I'm just going to turn the camera off just for a second. I just remembered my camera is on a tripod, so I can actually use both hands. So 3 eggs. These are farm fresh eggs I get from my local Sari store, which means a bit of everything store. You can get anything from there. We would call it probably corner shop in the UK, except mine's not on a corner. Beautiful people there, and I get fresh fruit, pineapple, fresh eggs, and you know they've still got the sort of bits of feathers and markings from the chickens, so I know they haven't come out of the factory. What else do we get from there? Oh, we get our fizzy drinks, L'Oreal, Sprite and Coca-Cola, which we're not supposed to have because we're diabetic, but I get for my guests. Okay, so I'm whisking it all up together, the eggs and the milk, and now I'm going to pour it over the top of the bread and butter pudding mix. So this is the liquid that will get absorbed when it's cooking. It'll end up kind of dry at the end. And obviously the bits on the top will get drier than the bits underneath. Don't forget to clean as you go. I'm just going to lift up the camera so you can have a drone type of view. My friend Mark John's got him back in touch after a long time the other day. He's had some technical IT difficulties and he said, "Where's your drone?" Here it is, Mark. So there you go, that's our bread and butter pudding, a drone's eye view. 8 pieces of bread, buttered on both sides, half a jar of jam, 180 grams of raisins or sultanas, how much milk was it? 250 ml of milk, 3 eggs, all mixed together. We're going to sprinkle some sugar over the top. Okay, just for the interest of showing you everything, here's the sugar. I found this bag of white powder at the back of my cupboard the other day. I thought it was cocaine. Joanna gets all this stuff from the market for me, and they just put it in a plain bag, so you don't know what it is. So I started marking it now, the marker pen. I know, just like my dad, eh? Okay, so the oven's nice and hot now, 180 degrees. We're going to put this on the shelf, halfway down the oven. I discovered something very interesting the other day as well, by mistake. The gas that burns for the oven is down at the bottom of it. And I was making some Danish pastries, and I put some up at the top up here and some down at the bottom down here. The ones at the top turned out beautiful, and the ones at the bottom all burnt to the bottom of the pan. Now I always thought that heat rises, that's why the top part of the house is the hottest. But in fact my Majam was telling me when I was discussing it with him that actually in the oven the heat is not evenly distributed unless you have a fan convection oven. And therefore the heat is often hotter in the case of my oven at the bottom than it is at the top. So that's why now I put things higher up in the oven so they don't burn. I don't put anything right down at the bottom here because it burns underneath, and that's what makes it difficult to get it out of the pan. So there you go, you live and you learn as you go along. Okay, we're going to come back in, how long? 45 minutes. Let me set it on my clock. The counter is on. Those of my friends in Bahrain watching this will be amazed that I'm now using my mobile phone, my Samsung A21, as a timer for my cooking. Back in Bahrain I didn't have a phone for 6 years. Can you imagine all those things that I can now do that I couldn't do before? Wow. "45 minutes later, back at the oven, the little alarm bell went to tell me that my bread and butter pudding is ready. Can you smell that? Isn't that gorgeous? See how the eggs and the milk have solidified. The bread on the top has gone like toast, and it'll be nice and soft and creamy underneath. I hope the oven sequence wasn't too dark. I just realized I turned off the lights when I went out because it makes the kitchen very hot. So here we go. Here's a top view, a drone's eye view of our bread and butter pudding. We're just going to make some custard to pour over that a little bit later on. So make sure you look out for our new recipe book. This recipe, bread and butter pudding, I found back in Bahrain. I've updated it and prepared it, and it's included in the new recipe book.